I was shopping around for the right frame to gift my friends who just got married because I had the cutest photo of them. The FrameBridge website made it so easy to preview options that I slipped in a photo from my trip to Japan for myself too. Now they've got a wonderful memory of their wedding, and I've got a new favorite piece of art in my house. FrameBridge has a curated selection of frame styles and design experts to make it fun and easy to frame what you love for the people you love. Visit framebridge.com or your local FrameBridge store at 1200 Villa Place in Edge Hill to start framing. Today on CityCast Nashville, Tennessean columnist Cameron Smith breaks down his recent article on tipping culture and whether it's gotten out of hand. He shares his hot takes on when to leave 35% and when it's okay to leave nothing at all. It's Tuesday, July 22nd. I'm your host, Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Your opinion piece in the Tennessean totally caught our eye because, oh my God, we feel your pain. Is tipping culture out of control? We say absolutely. Tell us about your frustration and what was the tipping point, pun intended, to write about it.
This was a love child born of me standing in the line at, I won't name the restaurant, but I get up to the counter. There's a long line behind me and I order the food. That's all I did. We didn't have a nice conversation. I didn't sit down. There was no white tablecloth. I was just standing there. And then I ordered the food, and then they flip the screen to me, and it's 20, 22, 25%. And I just had this for what moment? Like, what's happening here? And the people behind me, I could feel their eyes penetrating the back of my skull, judging me and saying, why don't you care about the American worker? What are you doing up there? And then I realized I got to write about this. I've got to talk about this topic because I really believe in generosity, which is kind of like the weird thing here. I believe that you need to take care of your people. I believe when people provide excellent service, you should acknowledge that and you should reward that generously. But what's happened here, and I think some of it creeped in during COVID because there was this like, okay, we can't touch anything. We can't talk to anybody, but like tips are still a thing, right? Okay, cool. and then it became basically a wage subsidy of you will pay us money to do the basic service. And sort of the way I look at it is I was raised with Cotillion and Emily Post and all of these wonderful manners things. And I realized that some of this needed to be updated for the modern context.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. It's so frustrating. I want to go around the circle. Daniel's joining us today too. Have we all worked in the service industry? Have we all worked for tips in the past?
Yeah, my first job in high school was a busboy. I worked at an Italian restaurant for 4 years. And so I know like the hustle of being a busboy. But this was back in San Diego. California minimum wage is way different from Tennessee's. I found that out real quick.
Yes. And, my experience isn't in the food space, but I worked a lot in landscaping and things like that where, people a lot of times don't even think about, hey, if I do a really good job, have it really clean, really sharp, tipping the lawn care people. That wasn't included in the food piece, but that's my experience with tips.
Okay, I love this. Well, I was in the service industry for about 20 years and made $2.17 an hour plus tips. So that was just, that's how it is as a waitress.
Yeah. So Cameron, I'm curious, in Nashville right now, what should be considered a standard tip for a full service sit down restaurant?
So I say 18 to 22% is sort of your baseline. I mean, a lot of people say 15 to 20, and people say, well, what about inflation, that sort of thing? Well, guess what? The inflation is also incorporated in the price of the food. So the tip kind of rises with that. The real deal with the sit down, and this is the full service restaurant that we're talking about, where that person is attentive. They're showing up, they're refilling your drink. Actually, just a couple days ago, had somebody who was truly excellent. Like when I got up, like took up my napkin, refolded it, put it on the table. I didn't even have to ask if I could have a refill. Like they were on it. And so for something like that, I'm going to do 30%. Like I'm going to say, wow.
Cameron, look at you.
Well, because you took care of me. You gave me, my wife and I are out on date night. And so to have a date night where we don't have to think about anything other than enjoying each other's company, that's very valuable. And we need to do that. We need to sort of bump it up for that special level. Now, most of the time, we're probably talking in that 18 to 22% range. The problem is we have just way more stratification than we used to. Like a true white tablecloth isn't the norm anymore. Like it's now fast casual. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you're sitting down, enjoying a meal, and you have a server attending your table.
Well, what about like the dreaded iPad prompt for a tip before we even get our coffee, like you were talking about before? How much do you tip for that? And what's your advice for handling that without guilt?
I say that the minimum is $1 on a drink. Like coffee or alcohol, it's $1, period. Like the idea of rounding up your change, it's 2025 people. If I give somebody a few coins, that's almost more of like a kind of a jerk move. It's like, I don't care, you don't care, no one cares. In that instance where they are mixing your drink, like even at a Starbucks or a chain where they have like a label that the instructions, they're doing something that, requires a little bit of precision. You want consistency in that drink. And I think it's okay if you say, okay, I'm getting coffee. I'm going to tip you $1 for being a barista. I don't prefer that, actually. I prefer waiting until you see what you get. And if you get the little swan in the foam or something, like tip them $1.50, $2, like fine. And that's the reason I try to carry around some singles and some cash so that I do not tip at point of sale. And then I'll leave $2 in the tip jar or something like that. That gives me a little more flexibility and I can respond to service as opposed to tipping before I know what I'm getting.
You know what the worst is when you do tip in cash, but they like have just turned their back and so they don't see that you have actually put a $5 bill in the tip jar and you're like, I tipped, I swear.
Yes, I try to, in those instances, I often try to be like a Pharisee in the Bible where I'm like, I want you to see this generous dollar that is going into this jar that you have.
I present this. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm not a huge coffee drinker, but if I go out to a bar and all they're doing is just popping the cap off of the beer, I tip $1. Mm-hmm. And maybe that makes me a bad person, but it's like you literally are just grabbing the beer and handing to me. $1 even seems like a lot for that. Sometimes.
It is. And there's a couple of things that people brought up and the reason that I stick to $1 there. One, in a bar scenario, there's responsiveness is really the thing, not creativity. Most of the time it's like, I pop a cap off, I mix, Coke and whiskey, like not complicated, right? Now there's some high-end bars that are a different animal, but most bars are, hey, could I get your attention in a reasonable time frame? And could I get you to pop that cap and hand it to me in a reasonable time frame? And if the answer is yes to both of those, $1 is perfectly fine. If it's a situation where you have no other mechanism to get that thing and you're waiting forever for stock and you don't want to tip because you didn't get service, I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're responding to the situation. But in some of these instances, for example, an analogous situation to that is DoorDash. They're not making the food. So if you don't like the food, it's not on them. It's, did you pick up my order? Did you get it to me in a timely fashion? That's it. And so that's the kind of way I think of a bar.
Will you tip more for like a fancy ass cocktail then?
Absolutely. I mean, if that cocktail comes under a lid and it is smoking or something, that's almost like a performance, right? In downtown Nashville, for example, for some of these cocktails, even in the suburbs, some of the high-end restaurants have $35 cocktails. Now they come with a skewer of pork on top. And there's I'm like, I don't even know what we're doing here. But that level of creativity and engagement there requires something a little different. So respond in kind. If somebody's putting on a show for you to have a beverage, help them out.
And I love like a Bloody Mary with like all the things. Like it's breakfast in itself.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a crab leg in there. What are we doing?
Right.
All right.
Well, so back to your piece that you did, you called it, you mentioned the hybrid hustle, meaning that you order at the counter, food gets delivered, but then you bus your own table. What do you tip then? Because you're doing some of the work as well.
The way I kind of think of it is roughly 5% at a food establishment for service rendered, right? So if they bust the tables, 5%. If they're bringing you the food, 5%. So for a fast casual where they bring the food and bust the table, I'll use a good example like Waldo's is a chicken place in town. They bring you the food, they bust the table. It's like, okay, cool. I can get 10% there and not feel like either one of us are getting a bad deal.
So a lot of restaurants right now split tips, as you know, with the front of house and with the back of house workers. Does that play into your decision?
I like to know who's splitting the tips generally, but I have 5 boys. And when we're going and moving and my wife and I are out on date night, a lot of times I don't have the bandwidth to be like, I wonder who is getting this tip pool and who is not.
Exactly.
You've got to trust the establishments that they're going to take care of their people. And look, particularly back of house folks, that what they do matters too. And so I understand how they split that. A lot of people don't know that when these tips are pooled, they have to be split, that the employer can't, generally speaking, take those tips and then stick them in their pocket. Now, how they split that is there. But I also realize if there is exceptional service, like there's something that really stands out, somebody was super attentive or they really engaged you and you were having a rough day, make sure you hand it to them directly. The coffee shop example, don't stick it in the tip jar. Just say, hey, you really made my day. Here's however many bucks.
That kind of goes back to what you mentioned earlier, take care of people. What do you mean by that, truly?
So in college, my wife and I had no money, like most college students, but we were at Washington and Lee in Virginia, and we would go to Roanoke, Virginia. That was like an hour away. And we would eat at this restaurant that's now closed. It was called Arzu's. And Carlos was there at Arzu's, and he had a tuxedo on, and they had the dessert cart. It was a fancy place, right? So we would like scrimp and save and like eat ramen for weeks so we could like go to this restaurant. And Carlos made us feel like royalty, like we're poor college students, and he treated us like kings and queens. So he became our person. Like once a month, we would try to go to this restaurant if we could afford it. And we always made sure that part of affording it is budgeting a nice tip for Carlos. And he knew us, he knew our name. And when that happens, those are your people. The barista you see every morning, that's your person. So take care of your people. Like remember holidays. If you get to know them and know their birthday, do something nice for them, because we call it the service industry, but like we kind of lose sight of the fact they're serving you. They are doing things for you so you don't have to do them for yourself. And so taking care of those people and saying, hey, I appreciate you. You are a human to me. Let's be honest. A lot of times people do not treat people in various service industries like humans. They just say, oh, you're just here to do the thing I want. When I have a problem, I'm going to yell at you and ask to speak to your manager because I can't even talk to you like an adult. That to me is the worst case scenario. Sometimes it's necessary, but the best case is you're my person. I know you. I know your life. I care about you. I build a relationship, and relationships make our community worthwhile. It makes Nashville worthwhile. And you have those relationships. That engagement is what we have radically lost. If you want to know why everybody's weird, it's because we don't do stuff like that.
Let's be honest, it's hard to survive financially right now. And so something I've noticed is these big national chains are raising prices and reporting record profits and then turning the metaphorical iPad around to the consumer to be responsible for the tip. It feels like they're just asking us as customers to cover what should really be their responsibility, which is paying workers a living wage. What do you make of that dynamic?
It was kind of funny that when I wrote this, I got like a lecture on capitalism from many readers who came back and said, do you understand how tipping works? And do you understand minimum wage and tipped industries? And the answer is yes. I reject the idea that the consumer should do a sort of independent wage subsidy. That's weird. Like price it into your food and pay your people well. And I get it. It's supply and demand. Like you need to be able to make a profit. I don't begrudge people making a profit. What I have a problem with is when you're playing a sleight of hand game that gets sort of foisted on the backs of your employees, which is, I don't make my food expensive enough to cover all my costs. I'm hoping that consumers will be generous with you and help you out because you work here. The wage subsidy part bothers me because I want you to have such good food and such good service that I will pay a premium for it. And what we've tried to do is skin it down and say, okay, I'm going to try to get as much as I can out of giving you garbage that's not healthy for you, that doesn't taste very good, and hope that you'll pay the people that deliver it to you. And that's just a bad business model. And those businesses, I don't hold back at all. They need to fail.
Do you find yourself tipping more at like local spots or small businesses compared to big national chains?
So generally the answer is yes, but a little caveat there. I don't do it just because they're local. I try to support local where I can. I do it because I know the people. And so I'll tell you where I tip the greatest is when I see a young person. I'm now in my 40s, so I'm now old, but I see like a teenager that is hustling it at a local joint, right? On like a $5 coffee, I'm going to tip them $5 because I want to incentivize work. And so I jokingly put in that the tipping for lemonade stands is 100%. And it's funny, but it's true that when I see kids out sweating like crazy, selling really not great lemonade and other things, Girl Scout cookies are another example. I want to support that. Like I want to say, hey, future generation, you're hustling it. You're taking your time that you could be playing on your phone or sitting on a couch in the AC, and you're trying to do a thing to learn a little bit about business. And so that's like good for me. It's good for my family. It's good for our community to have people that at a young age are thinking like that. So I really want to make it worth their while. And I think we all should.
I know there's been talk of eliminating tipping altogether and raising wages instead. Do you think a state like Tennessee would ever do that?
Not as a matter of law, and I'm very much free market. I mean, I believe that workers can say, hey, I don't want to work for that. I think this is bad, and go look for a better paying job, better paying wages. Now, there are risks with that. I mean, there are risks for the worker to say, hey, we don't think this is right. Well, okay, you're fired. I'll find somebody else. But what we don't talk about a lot of times is it's hard to find great people. I do operations for a company in Franklin. The switching cost for we have an employee, they leave to another job, we have to hire somebody else. There's a cost associated with that. So workers have a lot more intrinsic leverage than they realize to talk with their employer and say, hey, we think we could do a better job. We could make this place more profitable. We could do better together if you help us out. And some, are corporate overlords who say, no way. But especially on the local level, there's a lot of folks like, okay, cool. What ideas do you have? How could we make this work better for you? When you're in that kind of environment, there are places that I frequent. They are stupid expensive, but you know why they're great? Because they have that culture, because they say, you matter to us. We're glad you're here. Hey, what can we do for you? And so it's worth the extra couple of dollars on the cup of coffee versus I get a printed label of a thing and it tastes kind of burnt.
All right, we have to ask, Donald Trump's budget bill has just passed, and in it says there's not going to be tax on tips or overtime. But what's in the fine print, and how will this impact our service workers?
Up to certain thresholds. I can't recall off the top of my head what the amount of tipped wages was and the amount of overtime was. I actually think it's terrible tax policy because it is picking a service industry and say, oh, you're a tipped worker, so you get a tax break. But meanwhile, like the first responder that's not tipped, that may actually make the same wages, gets no tax break. I think the best tax policy is to have the lowest rate possible without all the like special carve outs and stuff like that, because really what this amounts to is like political pandering. And so even though I'm more conservative, I don't support that type of thing. I do think it is going to be a benefit to people in those service industries. Obviously, you're going to not pay tax on a certain portion of your wages. And then if you accompany that with some overtime, or you could actually really sort of daisy chain some of these together. What I'm interested to see is how do these policies get gamed? How does somebody say they tried to spell out what a tipped industry is. But my first reaction to this before I read the details was, oh, well, my salary is now a tip. My actual salary is $1, but everything else is gratis for the work I do for the people that I work for. I hope that that's not the case, that it doesn't get gamed. It actually does help tip workers. But man, I worked on Ways and Means. I had a boss on Ways and Means in Congress, and I saw how people, when it comes to the tax code, there's ways to twist and manipulate, which is why I don't like all the carve-outs and places to hide. Just make the rates what they are and don't let people wiggle.
Yeah, a lot of my friends are actually really scared about it because I think some of them are, I don't know how they do their taxes or what, but it's like they really will have to show their cash tips, which I think is the point of this. Right. But everyone's very nervous. So
they don't say that part, right?
Right.
Like a lot of cash tips, you just stick in your pocket and folks don't report it. Like we would love to say they don't, but we have hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes that are owed that aren't collected all the time. You know who really figures out how to leverage the tax code? People with money. They figure out how to do it. And then average workers and everybody else is left to try to figure this out. And at the end of the day, depending on how much you've been just putting in your pocket and not reporting, it might not actually be a good thing for you. Again, I urge people to follow the law and pay the taxes. But the problem is we got a tax code that's stupid if you don't have an accountant. That's not fair to the average American. But man, if you're a millionaire or a billionaire, it's a much better deal.
Last question. Cameron, this really has been so fun talking to you. Again, thanks for writing your article that caught our eye. When is it okay not to tip? Give me the worst case scenario.
The first one is clearly just you don't have another way to get your food and they're just asking you. Don't tip to that. Do not reward bad behavior when they're saying tip us for nothing. That's the easy one. The harder one is when you have truly awful service, and there can be any reason why, right? I ask people to show a little bit of empathy here because sometimes people just have a bad day. Something happens. They're distracted. It could be an illness in the family. It could be any number of things. So generally speaking, on like a sit-down restaurant, 18 to 22% is the high water mark. If it's really, really terrible service, it's not there, they're just AWOL, I'll do 10% and I'll write typically a little note and just say, hey, I just want to let you know, like, you just weren't there. And I'll just put that. I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's sort of like feedback at a job. Like, I don't want to tip them 10% and them say, well, they just stiffed me. I want them to understand, like, here's some things that didn't go well. And I just want you to understand a little bit of why. So they have some feedback. So if it is truly like a recurring pattern, they at least know about it. Because some people, like the one that I see most commonly, is folks get on their phones. They start to get distracted on something that's not there at the restaurant. And then you're sitting there like, can I please get my check for like 30 minutes? I have actually written on a receipt before, I hope you had an interesting conversation on your phone. That might be a little salty, but like they need to know, hey, he saw me just sitting on my phone while he and his family were trying to get out of here. And I didn't show up.
Well, this, again, such a great conversation with you. Folks listening at home, if you have thoughts on tipping, why don't you give us a call? Leave us a voicemail at 615-200-6392 or email us at nashville@citycast.fm. We'd love to hear from you. Cameron, Daniel, this has been so fun. Let's go out there and tip when they deserve it.
Thanks, Cameron.
Thanks for having me.
And y'all know we are going to tip well when we finally have our first membership meetup at a local bar or restaurant. And real quick, I just got a shout out. We got some new neighbors in the house. Cheryl H., Angelina B., Emily H., Pete W., Danny G., Catherine R., Ashley W., Jordan J., Ann P., Gracie F., Joan P., and Jeannie M. Welcome to the neighborhood. Y'all, we cannot wait to meet you in person. And folks at home, we don't want you feeling left out. Our doors are always open. Feel free to join anytime at membership.citycast.fm. That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell your friends? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!